Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Conscious Conversation series. I am Antonia, your host, the marketing manager of the Shiatsu Society, and I am incredibly excited to welcome our new guest, Daverick Leggett, into a new conscious conversation about Shiatsu, about Daverick's journey, and about different nuggets of wisdom that we can discover from behind the scenes. So thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I'd like to invite you as well to tell us a little bit about yourself and to get started in this conversation that we'll have together.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for inviting me. It's a long time since I was in the Shiatsu world, but I feel like I've been connected to that world ever since. So, I started Shiatsu in my mid-20s, probably. It's when I first came across it and um, became a practitioner and got on the mat. And that was my life for quite a long time. It was my living for a while. Um, and I'll come to that kind of career path if you like in a minute. Where I am now in my life is here I am down in sunny Devon. I'm glad it is sunny Devon today. It isn't always. It's a wet county, and Shiatsu is part of my history, but a really precious and beautiful part of that history. I think I owe it a lot actually, and the kind of culture that was around Shiatsu was a very lovely one. Yeah.
I'm really excited to find out more about that. And I want to invite you to go all the way back to the basics, maybe to the beginning of your Shiatsu journey.
Sure.
I know you became a practitioner in the early 80s. So I'd
Yeah.
like to find out more about that. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. What got you into this wonderful practice?
Okay. I wonder how far back to go. I mean, when I was a teenager, I was used to be quite clever at school, believe it or not, and I used to win lots of awards. And they gave us book tokens in those days, and so I used to go to this bookshop in Reigate it was, and I found my way to the back of the bookshop, which was called the esoteric section. And I'm 67 now. I think we're talking about 50 years ago or something. Um, and I found these little books on Tai Chi and things like, ooh, what's this? So I just found myself at that age kind of interested um, in that world. I didn't come across Shiatsu particularly. And and then I led a sort of alternative life in a way for a while. I was finding my feet. Um, I worked on a small holding. I tried self-sufficiency. I lived in the community. I was kind of finding my way around in the world. And then eventually I thought, actually, I need to get a serious job. So I trained as a teacher and in Liverpool, my mid-20s, and ended up moving to Reading. And it just so happened that in Reading, Elaine Lechte was living at the time, who's like a very, one of the earliest old hands in this game. And I started teaching, and it's those of you who are teachers will know what it's like. It's got its edges, and I needed something, and I need something to do with a partner I had at the time. It's like, let's do something that's just like takes me out of this, and we had there's this evening class in the local library. Elaine was running it, and this shiatsu thing I thought sounds brilliant, and so that was my way in. It was like a year. I did a year with her, I think, in that library, and loved it. I didn't think, oh, this is going to be my career particularly. It's more like this is something I'm really enjoying doing, and but also that it kind of suited me. Maybe I'll say more about that later on, but I resonated with it
Mhm.
in a way that kind of surprised me. Um, so there I was, and at the end of that year, Elaine was just very encouraging. She said, Daverick, you need to go and do more. So, so thank you, Elaine, for that, because I carried on and went and did some full training. The rest is history. Became a practitioner. Um, and in those days there weren't very many of us, really, not really, and people, people probably hadn't heard of Shiatsu by and large, hardly ever. You had to explain it all the time, let alone spell it.
Mhm.
And so it was interesting trying to make a living at that. So I stayed on as a school teacher, but I thought, I'm not going to last in this system, because it's
Okay.
really worked for me, not in many ways. And so I thought, I need a way out. I think I'm going to be a shiatsu practitioner. So I scaled my teaching down to half time, built up a practice for a couple of years, and then made the leap and went fully ballistic, fully shiatsu. And it worked. It worked. It was always thin, I have to say. It was never a huge living. That's probably true for most people. And then in the end, I supplemented it because I worked for the European Shiatsu School and ran a branch of their school after a while, and that was helpful to me. Also, I taught. I think the bit I really enjoyed is I taught shiatsu in adult education, which is where you got people coming in who wouldn't normally have come to it, but it was cheap, it was available, it was advertised. And I found that was very touching, actually. In some ways, it was the way I came to it, like a local class in a library, no great shakes, Um, and it was good. It gave people something. So that was in Reading. That was lovely.
Oh,
Yeah,
wonderful.
and
I have
then
so many
that's the
questions
beginning.
already. That
That's
was
the
the
beginning.
beginning.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of notes and I have so many questions already. But what I'm hearing mostly is that there was an early curiosity
Yeah.
for the mystic, the esoteric world, and then your educational background pushed you towards finding a lane or finding shiatsu or allowing shiatsu to
Yeah.
find you. And then from there, everything just became history. I'm
Yeah.
wondering whether there was a specific moment when you realized that shiatsu is so meaningful to you and that shiatsu will be part of your life for quite a long time from now on? Or was it a gradual build up?
I think it was gradual. I read that question before, thinking about it. I thought there isn't really a moment, but it was um, shiatsu for me is like having a conversation with somebody, but
Oh,
it's a
wonderful.
conversation beneath words. And I really love that way of connecting with somebody. And um, there's so much information that comes through the hand. It's such a deep way of meeting somebody, and in a very safe and in a very safe context as well. Um, Originally, I didn't set out to be a practitioner. It was like it was great in a group, and exchanging shiatsu is very warm. You got a lot of physical touch. We all got in it for that, I suspect. Um, So it was good, kind of oxytocin boosting to have all of that, especially when you're leading a kind of stressful life.
Of course.
To be honest, quite stressful. So it was good in that way. But yeah, I just felt comfortable. That's all I can say. It was like a growing sense of comfort. I was doing at the time quite a lot of yoga, Iyengar yoga. That was my thing. Um, so it was a way of using the body that I
Hmm.
can relate to as well. It's like, yeah, I like using my body in this way, and I liked all the core principles of shiatsu. I like the feeling of leaning into somebody, and um, but probably more deeply, it was the energetic sense, um, which I didn't really know I had until I until I discovered it. Uh, and then I realized it's something that actually I had all my life, but just thought it was normal, if you like. I didn't really think it was special. It's like, doesn't everyone perceive the world a bit like this? Can't everyone feel this or sense this? And
Yeah.
that was interesting for me.
Oftentimes we take our gifts for granted, we think that everyone
Weird.
has access to them, but in fact
Yeah,
it's a unique element that we can find in each of us. And I love that you've mentioned Iyengar yoga. Oftentimes I mention that I do have a holistic background,
yeah.
which is rooted in yoga. And I have a personal curiosity here to maybe find out a bit more about how shiatsu influences your yoga practice, or if you feel that your yoga practice has supported your shiatsu practice a little bit more. How do you find the bridge between the two of them?
Well, things moved for me. So it was yoga initially.
Hmm.
Um, well, actually, that's not quite true. It was Tai Chi initially for a while when I was up at university in the early days.
Hmm.
And then I happened to land in Reading, and there was a yoga class, so I went to that, and then I found Tai Chi and Aikido and things like that. So actually, I moved really from the yoga towards Tai Chi and Aikido
Hmm.
then soon afterwards to Qigong, which is where I am now. I mean, Qigong was the thing actually, and in a way, I mean, Shiatsu Shiatsu was part of me getting to Qigong as well.
Mhm.
I think it was part of that journey to Qigong, which is where I primarily am in my life now, in the teaching of that and the doing of that.
I do want to find out more about that as well, but I would like to just emphasize the fact that you mentioned that for you, Shiatsu was a way of conversing beyond the words. And I find that incredibly meaningful. And it leads me to a question that we've discussed about regarding how would you describe Shiatsu to someone that has never heard about it before? And I'm pretty sure it's quite complex, but if you can go a little bit in depth to see how would you approach this? If someone that never heard about Shiatsu would come to you, ask you, what is it? What would you tell them?
I mean, fair question.
You can take your time with this if you need.
Fair question. And I think, if I look at how my Shiatsu evolved, it changed over time, and my interest or my approach changed over time. So it's going to depend so much on the approach of the practitioner. I mean, I'd give a kind of basic, I'd say a few basic things, like it's a form of, it's a form of body work where you're clothed, I'd give that basic description. And then that it's based on the channel system of Chinese medicine, based on an understanding that we have an energetic anatomy as well as a physical anatomy, and the two live together, or we could even say one gives rise to the other. And that we work through with the Shiatsu through the physical body, we are also connecting into this energetic body. So I'd probably phrase it somewhere like that.
Yeah. You have mentioned earlier that Shiatsu helped you feel a little bit more connected. Did I hear that
Yes,
right?
helped me personally feel connected, definitely. And I think that's something people get out of Shiatsu, is they feel it's like their body gets earthed, I think, and they feel their connection to the ground and to the substance of their body.
Yeah. So it's a form of body work that focuses both on the body and the energetic body.
Yes.
It helps people feel more grounded and connected.
Yes, and it kind of depends where you are, how you practice, really. For some of us, it's really the physical level can be very strong. The pressure, the stretching, all of that can be like a deep part of it. Others, work more even off the body, or kind of very light, or more, not purely exactly, but more at the energetic level. And so I think all of us find our way somewhere in between those two, just according to who we are and what kind of suits, but also what the person needs. Some people really need that kind of very clear, strong physical connection, deep earth kind of connection. Others, are better off with something else, a little bit lighter or more subtle energetic work.
I see. So it depends also on the person that you're working with. I'm wondering which one of the two, the material plane, the physical body, or the energetic plane, was more of interest to you when it comes to Shiatsu.
Again, it changed. And when I started, I was really enjoying the physical level. And over time, I became more and more interested in, what I felt when I felt the points, when I felt the channels, when I felt energy, and especially as my Qigong developed. And I experimented a lot with working off the body, working with sound, working in all sorts of ways as kind of complements to the practice. And so for a while, I moved much more into like the interest was more energetic and feeling the shift at that level. But then I sort of cycled back into, actually, it's important with Shiatsu not to lose the connection with that beautiful physical part of it. So, that stretching and the pressure and so on, that for me, I kind of came back to that. Well, that's actually fundamental.
So I'm hearing that it varies through different stages of life or different stages of your journey. Is that true?
Definitely different interests as I went through it all, and also finding out who I am. am I a healer? Question mark. I don't know. You know, exploring that sort of journey, or what is this chi thing? You know, it's what am I going to call it? It's I was going to say it's an educational journey, but it's an educational journey for me as a person, like learning all the way. I never really stop learning. Like every client, of course, is a new learning, and then yeah.
I do hear this echoed a lot in the Shiatsu community, the fact that the Shiatsu practice or Shiatsu journey in general is a journey of self-discovering, and it's always contributing to the personal development of both the practitioner and the receiver. And since you've made reference to some of the clients that you work with, I'm wondering, of course, with consideration to their confidentiality, whether there've been any special cases, any moments that stayed with you, any transformations that that remained with you throughout your Shiatsu career, and of course beyond.
Funny enough, I was thinking just today about this whole thing of sort of following your own particular path with the Shiatsu. It's like you get to a certain stage where you feel like you want to move, or you want to get. It's like learning jazz. You can't play jazz unless you've got a really good understanding of music. Otherwise, it's just nonsense, you know. And the same with the Shiatsu, really. I think we all need this kind of basic structure and understanding, and then at some point we can, keeping reference to that, we can try other things. And there was one day when a lot of sound started to come. It was like spontaneous sound started to come in the Shiatsu, and I thought, oh well, that's what's happening. We'll just see what happens. And there was just this particular client where I just found this particular sound, and I saw this place on the back and just sent the sound there, and it totally opened them. I mean, they burst into tears. It was an extraordinary moment, and I think it was a huge release for them, and it was unexpected, but it was about, for me, following what's happening in the moment, and that for me was part of the Shiatsu journey. It's like being perpetually responsive, not following the formula, but what's alive in the moment, trying to stay with that. Yeah.
And also trusting yourself to that process as well, because I'm imagining that in those moments when something unexpected happens or something that you haven't experienced before, you can either deny it, reject it, or not be open yourself towards it, or you can, like you said, follow what happens instead of just following a formula. So I think
yeah, and I think
we
have to stay honest with ourselves. You know, it's quite possible to get off on those sort of things and get quite lost, actually, and get wacky and all the rest of it. So I think there's something about just keeping some quality of being settled in yourself all the time. So you can observe your experience and not let the mind get too busy with it all.
Or the ego attached to it as well.
Or the ego attached to it, you know. Yeah, exactly.
No, I can resonate with that. I've noticed many times that, especially in the holistic field, there's also the tendency for spiritual bypassing or developing a spiritual ego. And I really like that you've mentioned throughout our conversation how grounding Shiatsu can be, and how you learn to stay centered in yourself, trust what's happening, but at the same time create a safe space both for yourself and for the receiver.
I think these were kind of necessities in Shiatsu. And I mentioned at the beginning the kind of yoga and how it gave me a good body structure at the time and relationship with my body. So I feel like doing Shiatsu, we need to really, our structure when we're working in Shiatsu is really important. Both for the kind of protection of our own body, but also for the effectiveness of the treatment. And then another level, the way we structure our body, it's like an alignment, or it's like it helps us to be like a better receiver. It's like adjusting in the old days when you had aerials on the roof for your TV, or
turn on the antenna,
the radio to get a good channel. You twiddle it basically. And I always felt like this body structure is a bit like that. You get the body structure right, and then the signal comes through. So I also feel that was a thing in Shiatsu.
Yeah, I love that description. It makes so much sense. You know, you have the structure and the power in the body, and at the same time, you allow things to happen as they should in that field or in that moment.
Yeah.
On the other side of the spectrum, I'm wondering whether there've been any difficult moments throughout your career, and if so, what
Mm.
did you do to overcome them?
Mm. I mean, some difficult times with sort of transference with the clients, really. There's the more couple of difficult attachments that clients had towards me. That was difficult. And I can't speak much about that because, obviously I don't want to break any confidences there. But I think we all probably face that at some point as practitioners. There's going to be something happens in an attack. So that was a learning for me. It was a chance for me to go to therapy and look at things for myself and to see what's my part in that as best I could do. But it also, when I was part of what I did in the Shiatsu world for a while, because I was in the Shiatsu Society, I was an editor for the magazine for a while, and I was one of the assessors, teaching assessors for a while, do some of the, whatever you call it, practitioner assessments. And I found like the very particular thing that I had was, is this person safe? As a practitioner, are they actually ready to practice? That wasn't about their shiatsu, partly about their shiatsu, but are they ready as a person to be in that one-to-one relationship with somebody? Do I feel like I could safely say, okay? And, in a way, precisely because of the kind of things that can happen, but in a one-to-one space with yourself and the client, and it can, if you're not careful, it could get quite messy, Yeah.
No, because it can be a vulnerable space as well. And I do appreciate the fact that I heard you taking accountability for the way that you've contributed to some of those situations, which is an incredible thing to do. And I do hear that there's a responsibility to make sure that the place is safe for everyone involved. So when you mentioned that you were assessing to notice if the person is ready to hold that type of space, was there anything in particular that gave you a nudge that yes, they are, or on the contrary, not yet, maybe they need to learn a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, that was tricky.
I can imagine.
Yeah. It's better if it's someone that you've known for a while. So I felt like I could say that with the people that I taught, I could feel reasonably clear. The people I was assessing for the first time, or people I was meeting for that first time, I might just put the question in, because it'd be more than one of us would be assessing. So I might just feed that question into the assessors, who knows this person, is this, just got this feeling. So that's actually a hard one to answer.
I can imagine, but I do hear a lot in our conversation that there's trust in yourself, trust in your intuition, and then at the same time, openness to see what shows up in the moment.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing both the difficult moments and the most let's say wonderful or inspiring moments that you had with some of your clients. Would you like to tell me a little bit more about how did it go for you throughout your shiatsu career? Because at some point you've mentioned something along the lines of it being rather thin and a bit difficult for a shiatsu practitioner to make a living out of it. And I think that our community would really appreciate to hear more about how you navigated that, or if you have any tips regarding that.
Yeah, how it is now, I don't know, because I haven't practiced shiatsu for a long time, but I suspect it's very similar. So part of it was like, how can you whittle your life down to your minimum financial requirements to stay alive? That's the how do you build up a practice? I mean, we always said it takes 2 years to build up a practice, so it's like staying with it for a certain amount of time.
Okay.
We had to do, there was a lot of legwork at the beginning that I thought was useful, like giving talks and giving free treatments and kind of just getting known, really. I think over time, the word of mouth was what was getting people to me.
Hmm.
That wasn't true initially because who knew? You know,
Yeah.
who knew what shiatsu was, let alone who I was. Um, so then it was like putting out more adverts and having a business card and doing talks and going to, there used to be fairs, I don't know if they still exist these days, kind of health fairs and so on, that sort of thing, just getting yourself
Mhm.
out there.
I see. I hear you, and I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that it takes about 2 years to set up a practice, maybe for
That's
qualified,
yeah, reasonable amount of time.
maybe
Yeah.
for qualified practitioners. This is something that they're aware of. But if someone is new to the practice, I think that it's useful to, in a sense, set the expectations, because it's wonderful to have a passion. But when that passion hits reality, sometimes, the fuel gets a bit drained, and it's quite challenging to overcome it. I do say this with the experience of being in the yoga industry, and it being fairly similar when it comes to building a career. But at the end of the day, like you said, if people are willing to do the legwork, to put themselves out there, to trust, in a sense, in the power of shiatsu and in their own value, things may become a little bit easier. Tell me more about Qigong and how you got there. How did you
I just
manage
want
to
to
make
say
the
what I
switch?
will in there. I just want to say one more thing about the building up a practice thing. Um,
Please do.
it was a little story that Ohashi once told.
Hmm.
Ohashi. Um, so those people who've studied with him at all remember probably. He probably tells the same stories just like me. Um, and he said, when he came to America, came to New York, and he did shiatsu, and he didn't know anybody, and he had these thick glasses because his eyesight was really poor. He was very short, and he was kind of obsessed by all the kind of negative reasons why, and no one's heard of shiatsu. How on earth could he make it all happen? So he said, what I did, his little story was, I got a diary with all the appointments in. I put a line through every single one apart from one, and then someone eventually phones me up and says, I'd like a shiatsu, and he says, oh, you're very lucky, I got one appointment left on Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. So there was a little bit there of just kind of, oh, he must be good. There was a little bit there of, I think that's Ohashi's humor as well, but there is something in that. Yeah. But also for me, I had a part, I went part, I didn't throw everything in at the beginning. I
Hmm.
went part-time in teaching
Hmm.
so that I could build up a shiatsu practice. So I gave myself 2 years like that to actually get something
Hmm.
where I think I hit the sort of 12 client a week kind of mark and thought, okay, that's my kind of minimum threshold. I think I can go for it now. Um,
So
and
there
then
was a bit of a
also
strategic
supported
thinking.
myself with evening classes on the adult ed. So often I think we have to do something as well
Hmm.
and not put it all in the same basket. Anyway, the Qigong thing. Um, so, that's where I moved to really. And the Qigong arrived, well, I had this interest from, um, and I had done some Tai Chi.
Hmm.
Um, and then I was at a retreat in Wales somewhere, Llanrym Buddhist Centre in Wales it was, a Shiatsu retreat. And a guy called Steve Fox, actually, if he's listening. Hi, Steve. He's still came to teach some Qigong to us. And I had done some Qigong before. I'd watched a few things, I'd read in books, I was fiddling around with it, but I hadn't really been taught. And he taught this form, which was a 5 organ form for the 5 yin organs. And it just blew me away. I thought, my God, this is very good. I was very happy. This was on a shiatsu retreat. So I immediately thought, that's what I'm going to practice. So I just practiced that. That was my thing. And I still practice that form actually, like 40 years on. So it definitely stayed with me. Anyway, it came in through shiatsu. And then it's something I developed. I met a teacher, and it's another story in itself. Well, in a way, through it's the way the universe works. I have this thing I'm really interested in Qigong, but I don't have a teacher exactly.
Hmm.
I need a teacher. And then ears are open, and then I hear about a teacher, and it's like, oh, and I know this is an important thing. I have some dreams around it. This is really important. It was in London. And then lo and behold, my friends who ran the acupuncture college in Reading, John and Angela Hicks, they got him to come and teach in Reading, 150 yards from my house.
How things aligned.
How it works out, it's like, okay, I can't not go to this, can I? So that kind of flowed, and I really liked it. And at first, it was just for me; it wasn't for teaching or anything like that. But all my life, I've been a teacher one way or another. I've always taught, so it's pretty inevitable I'd end up teaching Qigong at some point. And then the calling for that, well, two things really. People kept asking me, please, would I teach? Would I teach? Would I teach? And at first it was like, yeah, this is kind of just for me at the moment, don't really want to teach it just yet. But so there's the world, speaks to you and just starts calling. Okay, I need to take notes there. And then I got to a stage in Shiatsu, and this is where I started to make the shift really, where I could feel like I was looking for something else, and my interest was shifting. It's like the one-to-one. I started to run out of juice. Honestly, I felt like I don't think I want to work one-to-one anymore. My son was born at that time, and I thought, that's one-to-one. That's going to be a lot of one-to-one. What's my capacity here? And the Qigong had really opened up for me at that time. So I thought, okay, I think a question I sometimes ask myself is like, what's the best use of me in this world? And then the answer was, actually, the best use of me would be to teach Qigong. And it's a way in which I can reach more people. But there was something, the shift there was really through the Qigong, and also I did a lot with nutrition. Both those things really. It was about helping people to help themselves. So you can teach something that's useful, and then people have tools, and they have a practice they can go away with. And also you can reach a lot of people. So I felt like there could be a strong knock-on effect into the world from this, and I think that's actually true. And I think with the Shiatsu, I think you get to times in your kind of whatever career you've got where you might feel stuck, for example, or bored, or that there's a change afoot, and you have to decide, is the change that's coming, is this about switch? Is something else coming, or is it about changing something within what you do? And I think what I got interested in the Shiatsu, and probably could have followed this thread, was about Shiatsu as a kind of education, or as a way of dancing with someone to enable them more to do it for themselves, which is the work that Bill Palmer is doing. He's a good friend, and also was a really good teacher for me. And there was a temptation to follow that particular path, and I think it's probably, if I'd stayed in the Shiatsu world, I would have gone along that path personally. But Qigong was a bit on fire in me. It really was a bit on fire. It's like, I just have to teach this, and it took off by a big time. I've been teaching ever since. And then the other thread, I wrote a couple of books on nutrition. I studied Chinese medicine nutrition quite a lot, and in my Shiatsu teaching, and then also with clients, I started to work a lot with food. It's like, and I realized it's about how can you support yourself? This is what you can do with food. This will support you. Or I'd give them Qigong exercise. This is what you can do to support yourself. And, I realized my interest was definitely going that way.
I hear that there were several callings. First of all, it came to you, Qigong, and it was very close, and you couldn't avoid that. I mean, everything just unfolded and aligned for you to be able to go there. Please carry on.
No, carry on. I said it would have been a bit perverse to say no to those kinds of invitation.
I can appreciate that, but at the same time, I do notice your ability to reflect and to discover for yourself whether this moment where you feel stuck is a moment where you have to change something within the area where you're
Yeah.
currently at, or if you need to move on. And sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to let go, and we
Yeah.
end up feeling attached, and we stay there even though we have callings coming from different places. So I just wanted to reflect that openness that you have, and ability to move on when time is right, to see that something has served its course.
Thank you. I mean, it was for me time to move on, but I also think, you know, sometimes, because we all reach these kind of thresholds in our work, I'm sure, of just like, where am I going with this? You know, am I
Hmm.
don't want to do it anymore? I'm not really a bit bored. I'm a bit bored, maybe.
Hmm.
You know, one choice there is actually to go deeper also.
Hmm.
It's like, well, what's the next level?
Hmm.
That's one route to go. And that, you know, it wasn't my choice at the time. It could have been.
Hmm.
To say that's also a valid, that's also a thing that we can look and do.
No, it definitely makes sense.
Feel bored.
This leads me to my next question, and I'm wondering, what are your hopes for Shiatsu on one hand, if you're still up to date with the Shiatsu community, considering that you've transitioned to Qigong as well, and if not, for the holistic community in general in the UK and probably beyond as well.
Hmm. Yeah, although I've left Shiatsu behind as my work,
Hmm.
um, you know, the body memory of it never goes.
Oh, wow.
Um, and that way of touching people, it doesn't go. It's like you're right, it's like riding a bicycle or something. It's like it's um there it is. So, well, going back a little bit, you know, in the Shiatsu world then, I don't really know what the story is now because I'm not really up to speed, but um there was a time because you know Shiatsu is essentially Japanese. And then we have this fascinating interest in Chinese medicine, which of course interlocks with Japanese medicine very strongly, but they aren't the same.
Hmm.
And and a lot of traditional Chinese medicine started to get taught in the Shiatsu world. And I was part of that. I was fascinated by TCM. I taught it, and it was my thing. It was my
Hmm.
thing. And and again, I started to have some questions around that. At the beginning, I was all excited about it. It's brilliant. This gives us like a deeper, wider picture, a deeper understanding through the TCM. We can understand much better about points and how to use points and blah, blah, blah. But I realized after a while that it doesn't, it's not suited to everybody.
Hmm.
It's only those people who've got that kind of interest or mind. And that Shiatsu is fundamentally about something else. It's about the phrase that we used to use was palpatory literacy. That's what you're learning. And that means what you're learning is to trust what the feeling you get through touch.
Yeah.
That's the information. It's not the theory of Chinese medicine. It's like what's when you touch channels and points and you what do you feel? That's the information. And actually, I found myself swinging the other way. It's like it's all well and good. It's great having the TCM if you're interested,
Hmm.
but the danger is losing touch with that basic thing of touch and the quality of touch. And again, that I think that phrase palpatory literacy is great. That's what you're learning as a practitioner, and that's the thing in a way that's should be being assessed in any kind of assessment. It's like, how does it feel? Because if it doesn't feel good, it's like, who cares what you know? Um, and I remember one particular guy that I taught who he just gave the best shiatsu in the world. It was like really, really good shiatsu. It's like, oh, you can welcome me. That's nice, you know. And but he couldn't get TCM at all. It's like it was too. It didn't have that kind of that mind, you know. Um, and so for him to be kind of failed, if you like, because
Yeah.
getting the theoretical side would be a terrible loss. So so in terms of my wish for shiatsu is like really giving value to touch and this um, skillful touch, you know, learning through touch, reading through touch, communicating through touch.
Oh, how wonderful that is. And it takes me back to what you mentioned earlier about not having a specific formula. Because if the assessment is you need to pass this type of modules and you need to be literate in the theory, but you don't connect with a sense of touch, it's such a loss, because people interpret the information in different manners and they should have access to that ability to adapt when needed. And I'm imagining that that's what makes a good shiatsu practitioner, but you can correct me if you want to add anything to that.
So, not really. I think just again, it's like going back to that analogy of music. It's like, a good practitioner needs to be grounded in the structure. And that's not abstract theory particularly. It's more, direct relationship with
Yeah.
energetic anatomy. They need to have that. Otherwise the treatment they're just lost.
Mhm.
And it can be really annoying to receive.
I can imagine.
Someone doesn't have that. It's like, what's this about really? So that is primary.
Mhm.
And learning forms and techniques and so on is all part of that, like learning scales and like learning etc. music. But also, yes, that once someone has that ability to really be alive in the moment, that's the key thing. And that's what really keeps shiatsu alive, or any kind of body work alive. It's like every session is different. Every session is different. Just like when I teach Qigong, I'll teach the same form. I've taught the same form for God knows how many years. And it'll be the same in yoga, but it's a different day. Everything's different. It may look the same, but actually it's new again. It's always new.
I can
So I think
definitely relate to that.
bringing that into treatment, I think, is also, that practice in a way of just remembering that it's always new.
And it's a matter of accepting what comes up in the moment. I relate with what you mentioned because I've attended a few Qigong classes in Kuwait, and the teacher was constantly repeating that it's all the same, it's simple, but every day is different. So just show
Yeah.
up and see what comes out. And oftentimes you would get like the mind would get in the way and you would be very, very tense, or on the contrary, other days it would be peaceful and everything would just flow.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
a matter of keeping the grace in a sense as you navigate through it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. I'm moving towards our final question. I've learned so much in this conversation, and I just want to share my gratitude towards you for that. Um, Maybe in case you haven't mentioned, because you have mentioned the 2 years that shiatsu practitioners should keep in consideration when they're starting their career, and also their ability to put themselves out there to maybe create a sense of urgency, like in the story that you told us.
Yeah.
Marketing matters. It's the age that we live in, and it comes in different forms. But is there anything that you would tell someone, anything else that you would tell someone that is just at the beginning of this journey? They're just starting, they're becoming a shiatsu practitioner, and they would really value some of your input from your experience.
Well, I think one thing is, before you start becoming a practitioner and charging, and so then it becomes your living.
Mhm.
Get as much hands-on as you possibly can. Get as many bodies, as many practice bodies, as many friends. Just keep on doing it, and so you become more and more experienced in that way. I think that's really key. So, in other words, not to jump in too early. Just get a lot underneath your belt. That's one thing. And I think another thing is, start thinking about who do you want to work with. So it may just be that there's some really particular area where you want to bring your shiatsu. Maybe you want to work with pregnancy, or maybe you want to work with drug addiction, or there's all these different fields where one could work. And sometimes that can be a way of getting a practice off the ground by really, really honing it down, working in one area. Only if that's what you have to feel, has to be what you want to do. But it's like being a generalist versus being a specialist or something like that. Just starting to hone it a little bit. Maybe just those two things. Yeah.
So practice as much as you can. become as experienced as
Definitely
possible,
that.
get
Mm.
hands-on as much as possible.
Yeah. I would also say get on the other end of body work yourself, so that you're also receiving.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of learning through receiving, and even if it's doing swaps with people and so on, that's good. And actually, I think getting other kinds of body work too, like massage or osteopathy or cranial or different kinds of body work. So it kind of helps you to orient where you are in shiatsu, what's different about shiatsu from other kinds of body work. I think that's also quite useful.
And these are definitely some valuable tips. I wrote down become more experienced. Decide if there's a specific niche that you want to focus on.
If there is, yeah. For some people there is, yeah.
Yeah. And in this way you end up, in a sense, differentiating yourself from the crowd. Also being open to receiving and swapping, and at the same time experiencing with other types of therapies as well. I think that would make a very versatile practitioner. This has been wonderful. Thank you very much for everything that you've shared with us. I cannot wait to upload the episode so everyone else can see it. If there's anything that you wanted to mention and I haven't had the chance to ask you, please, by all means, go ahead. And if not, I'm just sharing my gratitude for everything that you shared with us today.
Thank you. I mean, do you mean like self-promotional stuff, or what do you mean?
Anything, yes, by all means, yeah. If there's anything you're organizing, anything on the list, please do go ahead.
I can maybe give you a link to the websites where I put my work. Do you want me to just give you that afterwards? Is that
Of
useful?
course. Yeah, we can put it in the credit. Yes.
People can find out about Qigong class and so on.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I'm inviting you to say goodbye to everyone as well.
Yeah, thanks, Antonio. Thanks everyone who's going to be listening.
Wonderful.
Yeah.